Welcome to Radical Personal Finance. My name is Joshua Sheets. Many times I meet with listeners of this podcast, listeners who come from diverse backgrounds, diverse experiences, and frequently the conversation starts something like this. Joshua, I've been listening to you for a long time. I don't really agree with everything that you say, but I appreciate what you have done and it's been helpful for me. Now, I understand this sentiment and I appreciate this sentiment. This is an expression of honest human emotion, and I in no way wish to denigrate this. What I want to talk about today, however, is the fact that it's not ever necessary to insert the first part of that statement. Joshua, I don't always agree with what you say. Usually when someone says something like that to me, I respond with, "That's okay. I'm not sure I agree with everything I thought 10 years ago myself." And I try to make it humorous and usually let it go because that's the kind of thing that's in good taste. But I observe that in our modern society, this is a lost perspective. And this is something that we need more of in life. We need to engage with people based upon what they do, not based upon what they think. I have sought and am seeking to excise this statement from my life. I have pointedly avoided, for example, under recent circumstances, saying things like, I didn't agree with everything that Charlie Kirk thought, or everything that he said, because I am conscious, very conscious of this truth. I'm not even sure I agree, or let me modify that. I don't agree with everything I thought and said 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It matters little what you think. It matters all what you do. If I talk about Charlie Kirk and I don't insert the statement, I didn't agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said, am I thereby saying that I agreed with everything that Charlie Kirk said? The answer is no, and it wouldn't matter even if it did. Because it doesn't matter what you or I think or what you or I believe if we do the right thing. It doesn't matter why you think or believe what you think if you wind up doing the right thing. An example. I'm on a business trip right now. I'm away from my wife and from my children for more than a week. I recently met a beautiful woman. She was kind, she was young, she was beautiful. I was attracted to her. I met her, we had a conversation. Is the fact that I found her to be a beautiful and attractive young woman wrong in and of itself? The fact that I noticed that this is a beautiful and young attractive woman who I've had an enjoyable conversation with is completely irrelevant unless I act on that noticing and that attraction. If I were to pursue that woman and I were to say, you know what, I find you to be an incredibly beautiful and attractive woman. Would you like to come and have breakfast with me today? And I were to pursue her in the relationship, that would be where I have crossed the line. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, these are not wrong. What is wrong is what you do with them. It matters little what you think, and it matters all what you do. So if I'm thinking about a public figure or the way that I wish you to judge me, as a semi-public figure is not based upon what I think or what opinions you agree or disagree with me about, but rather what I do. Let's use Charlie Kirk as an example. Here is a man who started in the public eye at the age of 18 and who died when he was 31. I have been 18 and I have been 31. I am older than Charlie Kirk was when he died, and I have been on a microphone for longer than he was. I have changed over the last 13 years. And those changes are reflected in the archives of my recorded thoughts. You can go back to early episodes of the podcast, and you can find things that today you would say, Joshua, do you still agree with this? And I would say, no. I've tried to chronicle some of those things. I try to pay attention to them. I try to point them out. The point is that people change. And a public figure like Charlie Kirk also changed. When he started at 18, he was brash. He was arrogant. He was fairly anti-Christian. As he got older, he was less brash. He was less arrogant. He was more pro-Christian, less libertarian, more conservative. If he had continued living, a decade hence would reflect more changes. Because in life, we go through experiences and we go through things that mold us, that shape us. We get older. We get married. We have children. We get hired. We get fired. We experience success. We experience failure. We experience joy. We experience heartbreak. We experience new life. We experience death. We experience happiness. We experience sorrow. We experience commitment. We experience betrayal. These are the experiences that shape us as human beings. Your thoughts matter little. I don't judge you for your thoughts. I don't judge you for your opinions. I don't judge you for what you believe. I judge you for what you do. And I ask you to do the same thing for me. Because thoughts are just thoughts. They are not actions. One of the fundamental bedrocks of our society is that you are responsible not for what you think, but you are responsible for what you do. I am guilty of no sin for meeting a beautiful woman and observing, this is a very attractive woman. I'm away from my wife. Man, this is a really nice lady. I have committed no sin. The sin would be if I were to act on that thought. And in life, somehow we seem to have forgotten this. Allow me to read you a Reddit post. Title: I'm in love with my husband's mother and I have no idea what to do. For context, I'm 29F and bisexual. I recently got married to my husband, 30M. I'm 3 months pregnant, and as the title reads, I'm in love with my husband's mother too. This isn't to say that I don't love my husband. I do love him. I love him so effing much, and that's why this hurts. I began developing a crush on his mother, 50F, divorced by the way, only until after I'd married him. She is just simply the most beautiful, loveliest, kindest person I know. I don't know what to do. I feel so effing guilty and so effing in love at the same time. Why me? I don't want to break my husband's heart. This woman doesn't know about my feelings, obviously, and she views me like a daughter more than anything. But just last week, she told me that you get prettier and prettier every day. And while I know she meant that as a platonic compliment, I couldn't help how that made me feel. When you experience thoughts or feelings like this, that are clearly deviant, and if you give in to them, it will clearly lead you down a disgusting pathway, you do not act on them. You acknowledge that these are thoughts, and I will not and must not give in to these thoughts. The fact that you think something, the fact that you are attracted to somebody, the fact that you consider doing something does not mean that now I must be true to myself. I just have to do what I truly want to do. No, you stop. You're walking down the street. You look in a shop window. You see something beautiful and valuable. You see a brick on the floor. The fact that you see something beautiful and valuable, and the fact that you are attracted to that thing and that you wish to own and control that thing, does not mean that you now have the right to pick up the brick and break the window and steal the thing. A thought is a thought, and the action is what you're held accountable for. In our society, we should and we will judge one another, not for what we think, but for how we act. What matters is not necessarily what you believe. What matters is what you do. Now, why did I hedge right there? Why did I say not necessarily? I inserted the term necessarily because thoughts do tend to become actions. As Ralph Waldo Emerson so eloquently and beautifully put it, sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. Thoughts can lead to actions, which is why ideas are to be discussed. They are to be debated. They are to be exposed so we can consider, is this a healthy thought or is this an unhealthy thought? This poor woman on Reddit feels as though her greatest calling in life is to be authentic to her true self. I'm in love with my husband's mother. I am filled with this sexual attraction and romantic interest in my husband's mother. How can I authentically love my husband and my child that I'm pregnant with if I'm also attracted to my husband's mother? Maybe I should be a degenerate and go and express these thoughts and give in to my lewd and lascivious inclinations. The answer is no. You recognize this is a wrong and impure thought. This must be rejected. The thought will pass, the chemical reactions will pass, and I will control my actions because that is what matters. I will judge Charlie Kirk by his actions. I would debate with him about his thoughts, but I will judge him for his actions. I would debate with him about where his thoughts would lead, but I will judge him for his actions. In the days to come, I would ask you to consider if our society would not be healthier for implementing this. I don't want you to agree with me. I like it when you do. That's nice. But I like it more when you disagree with me and when you consider whether the thought or the idea that I present to you is a better thought or idea than you currently have. And I would much rather be friends with you if you are somebody who thinks differently than I do, but is willing to consider and engage in this dialogue, than if you're somebody who just says, well, Joshua's a smart guy, so I should just think and do whatever Joshua does. That is incredibly boring. I will never reject you as a person based upon what you think or what you believe. I will reject you as a person for how you behave and what you do. And I want the same from you. It matters little what you think. It matters all what you do. If you will do the right thing, the honorable thing, the righteous thing, regardless of whether you want to or not, whether you feel like it or not, you will enjoy the benefits of doing that thing. In the book of Matthew, Jesus taught a parable. It goes like this. Jesus says this, "Tell me what you think of this story. A man had 2 sons. He went up to the first and said, 'Son, go out for the day and work in the vineyard.' The son answered, 'I don't want to.' Later on, he thought better of it and went. The father gave the same command to the second son. He answered, 'Sure, glad to.' But he never went. Which of the 2 sons did what the father asked?" They said, "The first." Jesus said, "Yes, and I tell you that crooks and whores are going to precede you into God's kingdom. John," meaning here John the Baptist, "John came to you showing you the right road. You turned up your noses at him, but the crooks and whores believed him. Even when you saw their changed lives, you didn't care enough to change and believe him." Don't say, "Yes, I'll go and do this great thing." Go and do the great thing. Your thoughts matter not. Your actions matter all. Let's turn this now to our lives. One of the great problems that you and I face in life is that it is easy to aspire to great things. It is easy to build great goals in our minds. It's easy to have a vision of where you want to go. Or at least it's easy for some of us. For some people, it's not. For me, it's easy to do these things. It's hard to take the actions. And yet action is everything. I've learned over the years not to talk too much about my goals. I've learned over the years that when I talk and think about my goals, it's easy to get sucked into a castle in the clouds, a vision in my mind. And then when I come back and face the hard work of doing things, it's easy for me to feel like I have somehow accomplished something because I've built this castle in my mind of how great it's going to be when I do this thing, and then I don't do the thing. Now, it may not be easy for everyone to build that vision, to build those ideas. Maybe that's a uniqueness about my personality. But at the end of the day, what you do is what impacts your life. And it doesn't matter whether you feel like doing the thing or not. I have spent much of my life wishing for motivation, waiting for motivation, thinking about motivation, as if somehow there's just like this wonderful motivation gas that when I can find the right time, my room will be filled with this motivational gas, and I'll suck it in with a giant breath, and then I will feel like doing the things that need to be done. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. But the search for motivation, whatever that is no different than the search for love, whatever that is. One of the things I have been persuaded for over many years is that the way that we use the word love is unhealthy. Usually, in a modern American society, when we speak in English and we say, "I love this person," we are thinking of that as some kind of emotional experience, as in, I am in love with this person. That's reflected in the Reddit post that I read to you. For context, I'm 29F and bisexual. I recently got married to my husband, 30M. I'm 3 months pregnant. And as the title reads, I'm in love with my husband's mother too. What does this commenter mean? What she is describing is, I am experiencing some kind of emotional experience that causes me to think about and obsess over this other person. Now, in English, we encapsulate all of this under one single word, love. And it's not particularly helpful. We can expand the word with modifiers, so we can go through the Greek words for love, and then we can modify the English word for love. We can say romantic love, or we could say lust, or we could say heartfelt warmth and caring. We can modify this in many ways, but usually we just use the word love, as in I'm in love with this person. But friends, that's not real. Those are emotions. Those are chemical feelings in your mind. And they are no more trustworthy or useful to you than it is whether you get up today and you feel like doing the work that needs to be done, or you don't feel like doing the work that needs to be done. A mature man does not live based upon his feelings. A mature man controls his feelings by his actions. Much of the time, I feel lovingly towards my wife, towards my children. Much of the time, I feel attraction for my wife, sexual attraction. I feel relational warmth. I feel intimacy. I have a desire to be physically present with her because I enjoy the presence. But that is not the fullness of what it means for me as a man to love my wife. Love is something that we do. It's an action. It's an act of the will. It's nice when it is accompanied by emotions, just like it's nice when you feel like doing the work and you pour your soul into it and you do the work. But it goes the other way as well. Sometimes you do the work and then you feel like doing the work. Tony Robbins, at his seminars for 20 years, has been trying to demonstrate this to people. One of the founding, basic core things that he does at his seminars is teaches people how your actions create your emotions. And your emotional state, the biochemical experience that you have, is largely driven not by some external thing. It's driven by what you do. And when you recognize this and realize this, it brings you a dramatic freedom because you can control what you do. You can take vows. You can make commitments based upon things that you can control, which are your actions. You can do this in love, meaning relationships, marriage, in family. You can do this in your job, in your work. And it's powerful. When I stood up in front of a crowd of friends and acquaintances and said, I will love you to my wife, I did that without any fear or hesitation or reservation because I knew that I could follow through on that. I did not say, nor did I mean, I will experience emotional feelings of love and attraction towards you for the rest of my life. I said, I will love you for the rest of my life because I can control my actions. Every night when I lie down and go to sleep, I turn to my wife and I say, I love you. I don't stop and think about whether I feel particularly filled with emotions when I do that. I make that statement because it is a statement of truth. It is a truth based upon actions, both past and future. I love you is something that I say because it's something that I do. We have got to get this straight in our lives and in our world today, or everything that we have inherited from our forebears will crumble around us. Young men and young women are walking around the world being controlled by this idea that somehow I feel a certain way, and so therefore I must express it. I feel like I'm attracted to my husband's mother, and what do I do? How do I be true to these feelings? The answer is, what do I do and how do I be true to what is right? Oh, I met this beautiful woman at this conference, and wasn't it so nice? And I just feel like she's a beautiful woman. And why don't I just be true to this feeling and explore, and maybe let's see where this thing will go? No. You are true to what is right. You are true to your vows. You are true to your commitments. I just feel like Charlie Kirk is just saying things that are so harmful and so damaging and so hateful. And so I just feel like, we would all be better off if he were dead. So maybe I'll just go and get a rifle and kill him. After all, this would be true to how I feel. No. You are true to what is right. I don't feel so well today. Maybe I'll just lie in bed and not go to work because I just don't feel like going to work, and I don't feel like feeding my family, and I don't feel like taking care of them. So maybe if I just lie around in bed today, then that'll be true to my authentic self. No. You get up and you go and you do the things that you have decided to do because they are true and they are right. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what you do. So in our lives, we must carefully think and consider. We should chronicle our feelings. Feelings can be an indication for us. An indication that could be right or could be wrong. I'm not saying ignore feelings. I tend to be a rather emotional man, more emotional than I think most other men are. It's a good indication. How you feel about something, how you feel about a person is a good and useful indication. But it's only an indication. It's something that must be considered, thought about, logically analyzed, and compared to what is right. As I close, I hope that I have been able to bring these disparate threads that I've tried to illustrate together into one perspective. I've tried to demonstrate to you why I personally, very carefully now, have excised from my vocabulary words like, I don't agree everything, or I didn't agree with everything that so-and-so thought. I've been trying to avoid that for years. I've not succeeded. But for me, for many years, I have been trying to do that. I've been trying to honor men for what they do, not for whether I agree with them or not. And I've tried, it's been hard because as a public figure, I'm always aware, well, so-and-so's going to think about this. I said this laudatory thing about this public person, and now they're going to think that I agree with them. It's been difficult. It's been difficult for me to do that. But I've done this seeking to put this in practice without trying to bring attention to it. But I want to bring attention to it here because this has to end. This has to end. Most of the things that you disagree about with somebody will fade over time. Doubt me? Think about how hot the emotions are of the moment. Think about how vigorously you disagree with the president or the senator or some political figure. Think about how vigorously you disagree with a pastor, a preacher, or something like that. Then go back and find somebody from a century ago or a millennium ago there was a public figure where there's something written about them, and then go back and read a biography of that person's life. And what you will see is that all of us are a bundle of, I don't want to say contradictions. We're a bundle of actions. And some of those beliefs and some of those actions we laud and appreciate, and some of them we don't. But we form our judgments over time based upon what someone does over time. People are complex. None of us are all good or all bad. Even on an action level, none of us all the time live in total virtue with total perfection of thought and of word and of deed. We don't. We're people. My favorite president in American history is Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was an interesting guy. I like him because of his passion. If he were president today, I would probably have the same frustrations with him that I do about President Trump. They remind me consistently of one another. But because Theodore Roosevelt is so long ago, it's relatively easy for me to be charitable towards former President Roosevelt. And I ask myself, why can I not be similarly charitable towards current President Trump? We ought to be charitable to people and judge them for what they do and focus on, in essence, their life's work. All historical figures are flawed. You can go and find whoever you hail as fantastic, as great. In religious history, it might be Martin Luther, John Calvin, St. Augustine, whomever. It might be Pope John Paul or Pope Francis. It may be anybody. You have to look and recognize, here walked a man who had a set of beliefs, had a set of actions, things that he did. And we should render judgment towards men of the past, just like we should render judgment towards men of the present. But the judgment should be based upon actions. That's the first thread that I've sought to pull for you. The second thread that I've sought to pull together in what I've said here for you is that your feelings don't particularly matter if your actions are righteous. One of the things I appreciate so much about studying the law and the biblical law, which is the fountainhead of our society, is that the civil government here on earth can and must always judge you for what you do, not for what you think. And we can and must judge one another for what you do, not what you think. If you think about having an affair with someone who is not your spouse, I won't judge you for that, because that's a thought. But if you commit adultery against your wife or against your husband, I will judge you for that. And everything in our society must be set up with this in mind. I recall, I've spoken about this many times with regard to marriage. If you look at one of the challenges and the collapse of marriage rates in our society, one of the reasons that many people are no longer willing to get married is that marriage and divorce are no longer based upon what people do, but on what people feel. In the wake of the no-fault divorce revolution that Governor Reagan introduced to the United States, and which has now become the law of the land in most places in the earth, you can no longer enter into marriage confident that you will die a married man. See, if I'm a 20-year-old young man and I'm thinking about getting married, if we live in a morally sane universe and I enter into a commitment a union with my wife, a covenantal relationship, and a contractual obligation. I can stand up on my wedding day and I can say, I will love you in sickness and in health, in wealth or in poverty, for better or for worse, until death do us part. I can make that vow, that commitment, and I can be true to that, and I can make that vow and commitment confidently. And my wife can make it back to me. Why? Because it's based upon actions. And in a sane world, marriage law requires actions. The fact that I don't feel like fulfilling my vow today doesn't mean I get to go and be released from that legal contract. And that is what, prior to no-fault divorce, that is the way the law was written. Today, after the no-fault divorce revolution, a man who is 20 years old can just fall out of love with his wife 10 years from now and divorce her for no reason. A woman who wakes up at 30 years old and says, I just don't feel like I love you anymore, can go and get a divorce against her husband. And that's not enough to maintain the difficult relationships through the difficult times. See, the reason this is so important is not because it's not for everybody on the extremes. There are probably people out there that always think righteous thoughts and always experience right emotions and don't need any external controls on their behavior. And there's probably people out there that always think evil thoughts and always experience evil emotions, and no matter how many controls are imposed upon them by society, will always do the wrong thing. But then there's most of us who are in the middle. And we experience sometimes righteous thoughts and sometimes wicked thoughts, and sometimes right and healthy emotions and sometimes negative emotions. And so when life and society put structure in place for us, then we're able to consistently make right choices. And over time, that keeps us going forward. Most marriages, using my marriage example, most marriages will go through good times and bad times, happy times and stressful times. And yet it's that underlying commitment, strengthened by the legal contractual obligations of a man and a woman together, that keep the family pulled together through the difficult times. If that's not there, we lose too many people to thoughts and feelings, which are fickle and unreliable. That's why this matters. And so if we can set up our laws and our society in such a way that it arranges this, and that's what, when I speak to men, it's very frustrating, because I'm a fan of marriage, and many men will say to me, but how do I know that my wife's not going to divorce me and take all my money? And the only way that happens is if you're dealing with a man and a woman of sincere and deeply held conviction. Usually this would be a sincere and deep religious conviction, or it could be a philosophical conviction of some way. I can't keep my wife from divorcing me and leaving me and taking all of our stuff, and I can't do that. The law doesn't protect that anymore. The law doesn't protect my marriage. If she wakes up tomorrow and she feels like she doesn't love me anymore, she can divorce me and take everything. She has that legal right. So the only way that I felt comfortable going into marriage is that she may have that legal right, but she is deeply convicted of the same thing that I'm deeply convicted about, which is that what matters is what you do. So in the old system of where, in order to be divorced and legally released from your wife or your husband, you had to demonstrate moral fault based on action, that a man or woman could enter into marriage confident that as long as I don't commit adultery against my wife, and that adultery has to be proven with evidence, as long as I don't commit adultery against my wife, as long as I don't abandon my wife, then she can't divorce me. Notice, by the way, that doesn't solve things. It may not mean I have a happy marriage. It may not even mean that I'm, in the same house. Marriages have always had challenges, but at least legally, she can't divorce me. And then hopefully we can fix those things and we can live in the same house and we can have a happy life. So that's the second thread that I'm seeking to bring through, is that We need to always recognize that we're judged for our actions and hold people accountable for our actions. I judge the man who killed Charlie Kirk because he murdered another human being. I judge Charlie Kirk for his actions, not for his political beliefs, not for his political opinions, not for whether I agree or disagree with him, or whether I think that he was healthy or not. I judge him because he was a righteous man. Why do I say he was a righteous man? He was a faithful father. He was a faithful husband. He was kind towards people. He did not aggress on people. He did not attack anybody. And so therefore, I can say he was a righteous man because of what he did, not because of what he believed. I could debate with Charlie about what I disagree with him about, and that would be good and healthy. And Charlie would sit down and he would argue with me and I would argue with him. And guess what? That's what I want. How anybody with just a modicum of maturity, we want to find out when we're wrong. That's why free speech and the right to free speech and free debate and free expression, that's why this is so important, is because none of us are smart enough to figure this all out ourselves. And so we want to expose what we think. We want to expose what we think to judgment and to discussion, and we want to collect evidence and we want to change so that we can get better. No 20-year-old knows it all. No 100-year-old knows it all. There's a change in life from 20 to 100 where we get better, and we get better as we expose ourselves to ideas, to thoughts, to things that we disagree with. And we consider, why do I believe what I believe? Am I correct about this or am I wrong about this? I get far more out of Radical Personal Finance than you do because I have to articulate what I think and why I believe it. I have to make an argument to you, and that makes me better. And then when you come back and you say not, Joshua, I don't always agree with you, but rather you say, Joshua, I don't agree with you on this, then I can respond. And I can say, well, here's what they think. What do you think? And go back and forth. And that's where our lives and our society actually get better. This is the foundation of a healthy society. I want my great-grandchildren to inherit a world that is infinitely better than the world that I inherited. And the only way that will happen is if I seek to find out what was great and excellent and useful and effective about the world that I inherited, and what was wrong and what was not useful and what was destructive about the world that I inherited. And then in my generation, I get rid of the things that were not useful and not helpful and destructive, and I try something new. And probably all of the things that my generation implements in the world will not be good. But some of them will be. And the next generation and the next generation and the next generation will grow and build. And we should do that always with honor for past generations, not engaging in somehow the fallacy of judging all people of history by what you and I, as perfectly enlightened human beings, now know is absolutely true, but judging them based upon the unchanging moral standard that we all know and how that was carried out. And that's based upon actions. And then the third and final thread that I've sought to engage you with is that if you want to make change in your life, it matters not what you think. It matters all what you do. And so in order for us to make changes in our life, we have to first of all stop even considering, well, do I feel motivated? Do I feel like doing these things? It's a waste of time. One of the most important lessons for you and for me to learn and for us to enforce upon our children is not to ever wait for motivation. Motivation is a fickle creature. It may be helpful in some situations, and so if we can generate motivation, let's do it. I enjoy actually motivational stuff. I enjoy motivational content. I enjoy motivational materials. I hope that you feel motivated in many cases when I speak to you because I enjoy motivation. Just like I enjoy feeling loving and warm towards other people. I like to create those experiences. And I believe that it's helpful. I can take my wife on a wonderful date. I can engage in a relationship with her, and I can create feelings of love and intimacy and closeness. And those feelings are special. I can control how I feel with regard to my motivation towards my goals to a significant degree, and those feelings are special. I can visualize my goals. I can put them on my vision board. I can listen to motivational content. I can read motivational books. And those are all nice things that I can and should do. But at its foundation, I must never think that what I do is going to be controlled by how I think. Whether or not my wife and I have been on a fun romantic date does not in any way affect what I do. I have no more justification to pursue the pretty girl in the hotel lobby because I went on a nice date with my wife or I didn't go on a nice date with my wife, whether I feel loving towards her or whether I don't feel loving towards her. The standard of my actions is external, and it's based upon actions, not thoughts. So I can appreciate the nice thoughts, but I can't act on the not nice ones. And the same thing with life. If you've decided that you will accomplish something, you will do something, you will start a business, you will pursue a goal, you will finish your degree, that is a thought and a decision that you make. And then you must put in place the structure that makes it so that you follow through on that goal. By the way, I'm trying to use these examples of like a husband and a wife and sexual attraction and affairs and all of that because I think it gets to something that most of us who have passed puberty have experienced, where you feel these attractions, you feel sexual attraction, and these are powerful things. And so when they're powerful, what we do is we recognize that in order to deal with these things, I have to put in place a structure. If there's a certain person that I'm attracted to or a certain place that I go that causes me problems, what I must do is I must stop and I must not go to that place. I must not go and do that thing. And so we put in place a careful structure around ourselves to where we're never going to do it. The pretty girl that I met this week, right? She was nice. I liked her. I thought, man, I would enjoy talking with this lady. I didn't invite her to breakfast. I wouldn't invite her to breakfast. I would enjoy talking to her if it randomly comes out in a group, but I'm not going to pursue her and start down that pathway. And every man knows this. You don't play with fire. And the same thing happens with regard to your goals. If you don't feel like following through on a goal, that's okay. But if you've put in place the structure to make it effective, then that's where things happen. If you're fat because you eat ice cream and you always keep tubs of ice cream in the freezer, you're a fool. Because just the simple truth of, hey, I need to go out and go to the ice cream shop in order to get ice cream might be just enough friction for you to not keep eating ice cream and keep being fat. And so a wise man looks at his goals, looks at his desires, makes a firm decision that this is what I will do. I will get this degree. I will improve my job skills. I will buy this house. I will start this business. I will 10x my revenues. I will learn how to do these skills. I will do these things. And then you seek to put in place the structure that protects you against the times when you feel unmotivated or the times that you feel weak, so that you have a higher probability of following through on that. And so it's not that emotions and thoughts are not useful. There are thoughts that are useful. The thoughts that I have about the value of debate and the value of free expression, the value of freedom speech are the thoughts that control my actions. And that's why these things matter. Our society must be imbued with a deep respect for liberty of expression and for free speech for all, because then when people say things that we don't agree with, we're not tempted to go and to engage in violence. We say, you know what? I disagree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it. That is what my American culture is built on. That is the bedrock of American culture. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it. When that starts to go, and you start to have a world in which, you know what, maybe world would be better if you just couldn't say what you want to say, then all of a sudden now, a man has a thought and says, you know, so-and-so is very hateful. And maybe if we just removed his ability to speak, then our little society would be better off. And that's the trend that we see happening around. This has to end. So apply these thoughts in your own, these ideas in your own life, and build a structure. And don't depend on how you think and how you feel. Depend on the decisions that you've made and the structure that you've built to reinforce those decisions. Trying to use the free speech example here, right? One of the things that's so special about the United States is that we have a structure that supports free speech. And that happens on two levels. First of all, from the perspective of government, we have an almost universal and total commitment to the value of free speech, in that government cannot punish you for what you say. And that includes inflammatory statements, that includes hate speech, it even includes incitement to violence in many cases. The law is very, very hardcore on that, and rightly so. And on the other side, we have to buttress that law with a culture that prioritizes the right to free speech. It doesn't mean that you have to hire somebody who dances on the grave of the murder of an innocent person and says, do that. You have the absolute right to discriminate, to hire the people that you want and to fire the people that you want. You have the right to start and to end relationships that you disagree with. You have the right to discriminate against people that you don't like and to discriminate in favor of people that you do like. These are all what it means to be a human being. And so you have these rights, and our culture should encourage these rights. You have the right to free association with the people that you want to associate with. But we are healthier and better off when we encourage not only the law and the legal foundation, but we encourage the culture that comes from it. Our culture is healthier and better off when the law forbids divorce unless adultery has been committed. But we are also better off when our culture encourages love-filled marriages rather than loveless marriages. These things have to go together. I want the law to back up and say that if I could change the law, I can't, right? This is not the law as it stands. But if I could change the law, I would have the law of the government say that if a man or a woman, if my wife has not committed, I would have the law say that if I have not committed adultery against my wife, and if I have not abandoned my wife, then she cannot divorce me. That's what the law would say. But I would not argue that the law should say that I have to buy my wife flowers every third Thursday of the month. The law should simply reject the most clearly judged negative actions. If my wife is going to legally divorce me, she must prove before court that I have committed adultery against her or I have abandoned her. Because then I would have clearly by my actions not fulfilled my vows. And therefore, she could bring a divorce suit against me. However, if I forget to buy her flowers on the third Thursday of the month, or if I don't have the money to buy her flowers on the third Thursday of the month, or if I just don't want to buy her flowers the third Thursday of the month, the law should not penalize me for that. But just having the law in place is not enough. The culture should be one in which my friends come to me and say, "Hey, Joshua, it's the third Thursday. Why don't you buy flowers?" The culture should be one in which my parents say, "Joshua, here's a flower buying budget." The culture should be one in which the preacher stands up on Sunday and says, "Hey, men, marriage is better if you buy flowers." The culture should reinforce the expression, the positive actions and expressions of the law. And that's the same thing we need with regard to free speech, is that the free speech that the government does not deny, meaning that the government is restricted from passing laws that forbid free speech, is not enough. It's a good and necessary start. But then our culture must be one that embraces the expressions of freedom and freedom of speech. And so our culture should be one not that shuts down debate and public discussion, but that thrives on debate and public discussion. And our culture should encourage this as well as the other associated freedoms. And as we look at the current moment in which we debate these things, the freedom that I have to disassociate with people who make immoral calls and dance on the grave of a deceased person is an expression of free speech. That's the continuity of the principle. I am not limiting your right to free expression if I fire you from my business because you make immoral comments rejoicing in the death of an innocent person. That is an expression of the same concept, same freedom, and that has to be reinforced from a cultural perspective. So I don't want to go too deep into cultural commentary, but I feel like that's useful in the moment, that we need the law and we need the application, the culture. Both have to go together. You and I have to build a culture of free debate of ideas, free expression of ideas, and debate these things vigorously and welcome the discussions, welcome the disagreement, and welcome that. That's our job culturally. And then it's the government's job to protect it legally. So the application to your goals is, it doesn't matter what you say you're going to do. It doesn't matter what you think you're going to do. It doesn't matter if you spend all your time thinking about your goals. It matters what you do. So sure, think about them, say what you're going to be, write them down, put them on the wall, but then create the structure around yourself that reinforces your following through on those. Hope these ideas are helpful to you. Hope they're useful to you. Don't come up to me next time you see me and say, "You know what, Joshua? I don't agree with everything that you say." Again, if you do, I'm going to be kind because I understand what you're trying to communicate. You're trying to communicate something complimentary. What I'm telling you is that's not necessary. Just say, "Joshua, I appreciate what you do." Or even, "I appreciate who you are based upon what you do." Or, "Here's an idea that you've said that has helped me, and here's what I did with it. Here's something that you said that I disagree with. Can I ask you a question?" And I'll just say, "Well, why did you disagree with it?" And we'll have then a productive relationship. You don't need to agree with me. It's like I don't agree with Charlie Kirk. That's not the foundation of a good relationship. You judge me by what I do and how I act. Judge Charlie Kirk or anybody else by what he does and how he acts. That's what really counts. Thank you for listening. I'll be back with you soon.